According to a disastrous new survey, half of all jobless Americans were unable to pay for basic expenses in August. So now this is according to a new survey released by Morning Consult. And in that survey, they found that the share of jobless Americans that are struggling to be able to afford their basic necessities in the midst of a coronavirus and economic crisis nearly doubled after Senate Republicans allowed the $600 federal unemployment benefit to expire. So that's disastrous. Let's give you some of the numbers. The survey found the share of unemployed workers unable to cover their basic expenses, things like food, rent, transportation, insurance, utilities, etc., with their unemployment benefits rose to 50% in August, or an estimated 8.3 million people. So you have over 8 million people who cannot afford the basic necessities in this country. Now, again, that's up from around 4 million people. So that's a significant share of Americans that could use some help. Comparatively, 27% of unemployment insurance recipients couldn't cover the basics in July, while the weekly boost was still in effect. Again, that's because, and I've mentioned this in other videos, right, where health insurance is a big cost that doesn't get supplemented by the $600 extra weekly benefit. Again, health insurance in this country is incredibly prohibitively expensive. If and if you're unlucky enough to, of course, be let go from your job, for example, your job shuts down, or at least to shut down temporarily because of coronavirus, you don't get to keep your insurance benefits. You end up losing your insurance, millions have. And so that's a big problem. And so if you're not able to make those payments and you have maybe a pre-existing condition, or some sort of insurance costs that require you to have it to be able to afford certain things, well, then you really are SOL, and you have to choose between the electric bill or making sure that you get insulin this month. And so a lot of people, their lives have been thrown into chaos as a result of coronavirus and the resulting shutdowns as well, and the lack of government support going along with this shutdown. So that is really, really bad. Okay. And it makes me want to ask, why the hell is Congress on a break? Why are they off until after Labor Day? How do we have a government that gets away with taking a vacation during a crisis? And this is not the first vacation that they have taken since the beginning of coronavirus. I believe this is the third break, the third congressional recess they have taken, and only had one piece of legislation to address coronavirus passed, which ran out on July 31st. It is now September 2nd. Why? Well, I'll give you the answer why, at least why I think so, right? By design. This whole thing by design. Again, Republicans, they decided they wanted to let the expanded unemployment run out. Their whole purpose was to send people back to work. That's not a conspiracy. They have openly said that, right? No, we want to send everybody back to work. We don't think coronavirus is a big deal, so we want people to go back to work. And look, generally, most Americans do want to go back to work, but they want to do so when it's safer to go out, or when they believe it's safer to go out. Okay. And so Republicans have said, look, we don't want the cure to be worse than the disease. We think the economic downturn is going to be far worse for people than the coronavirus itself. And then they go about to into basically making that true by not being able to give the American people, or not giving the American people the support that they need to survive the economic downturn of contracting not only our economy, but the world economy as well. And so they admitted that, right? And so they also said, well, we're not going to reauthorize payments that pay people more to stay home during the pandemic than they would make working. We don't believe that that's a good thing. We believe that's a bad thing that people make. And again, I've given you the numbers before. In most states, it evens out pretty close to about $15 an hour, or just a living wage. And so they're making the case that, oh, no, you shouldn't make a living wage. We don't believe that you should make enough to survive on your own. Oh, well, that's great. Awesome. And so, again, that's what they've publicly told people, right? They've also publicly said, some members, that they wanted to send people back to work, even if it means sacrificing older people, right? Um, I believe it was Peter Navarro that said that. It's a Trump administration official. Came out and said, yeah, hey, I'm an old person, and if I die for the economy, that's fine. Sacrifices have to be made. Several Trump administration officials have also made that case. And so, okay. And again, they've actually done so by opening up certain places in the economy before experts agreed that they were ready. And now we have numbers. Over 6 million Americans have coronavirus. Over 184,000 people have died. And of course, to push back against that, Republicans cite the fact that only 6% of people died from just COVID-19 alone, meaning that 94% of Americans, according to them, didn't die from COVID. Well, okay, but they died from other things, other conditions, comorbidities, as they call them in the medical field. These comorbidities are made worse by the presence of coronavirus, which attacks all systems in the body and actually makes you more susceptible to death. If you have diabetes and you get coronavirus, you're more likely to die from complications related to that diabetes, thanks to coronavirus weakening your system. And so, and look, even healthy people who get it are starting to show that they have developed some of these comorbidities after dealing with coronavirus. And for example, there are vascular issues. Some people have been found with more fluid around their heart that didn't exist before, lung damage, heart damage, kidney damage. And so these people will be needing medical care for the rest of their lives. There are even people with neurological problems, even developing depression. And so we've never seen a virus before that attacks the body as thoroughly as coronavirus does. And yet we're sending people into it by literally trying to starve them into going back to work by not giving them enough resources to survive. And so one of the big problems with that, aside from the virus, is the fact that economists are warning that for some time, there will be millions more people who are unemployed than there are available jobs. And so you're going to have too many jobless people and not enough jobs, not enough aid, and then, of course, the virus itself, and you have an economic disaster of epic proportions. This is not going to turn out well. And you might be able to point to Trump and say, look, he actually did something about this when Congress wouldn't. He took executive action back in August to use disaster relief money to increase unemployment benefits by $300 a week and asked the states to chip in $100. Now, a lot of the states are facing some rather big budget shortfalls, so they're not actually able to afford that extra $100. Not only that, but the system itself that's set up is not set up in a normal way. They actually had to create a brand new system in order to disperse those benefits, and that is slow going. And so not only that, but the states have to apply and then be approved by the administration, by the president himself. And so all those factors mean that this aid, what little it is still not getting out to the people fast enough. And even if it does, it's not going to really be as helpful as it would to get the full $600, which, again, that's what Democrats in Congress are trying to push for and have been trying to push for. And so now, Heidi Sherholtz, senior economist and director of policy at the Economic Policy Institute, had said this back in August, quote, about the presidential memorandum. They said it's a nothing burger and a false promise that actually does more harm than good because it diverts attention from the desperate need for real relief that can only come through congressional legislation. So, meaning Congress has to get off their ass and get back into session and do something about it. And look, I say Congress, but really the Democrats have already done something, okay? It's one half of Congress that has decided not to do anything, and that's Senate Republicans. House Democrats back in May actually passed the HEROES Act that gives money to the states, gives money to the post office, again, to help with mail-in ballots, which are related to coronavirus, by the way. It extends the $600 federal benefit for unemployment, authorizes another round of $1,200 stimulus checks, extends rent protections, which again, you've got an estimated 40 million people that now will not be able to pay their rent, that will get evicted, that are in danger of that, and that stuff. Now, Republicans, to be fair, they did come back and put together a rather haphazard counter proposal. It's a very skinny counter bill that leaves out a lot of those things, but does add, I believe, a $400 expanded unemployment benefit. But of course, it's missing the stimulus checks, money for the states, money for the post office, and again, comes out to about $1 trillion. Republicans made that offer. Democrats came back and said, no, we're not going to take that offer, but we are willing to drop $1 trillion off our own bill. And so bringing it from a $3.2 trillion bill to about a $2.2 trillion bill, Republicans said, no, that's still too much. We don't agree. And in fact, we're going to take a vacation until you come to your senses. So that's the Republican proposal. And so according to Newsweek, Republicans are going to come back. Once they do come back after this latest break, they're going to continue pushing that skinny bill. And there's basically right now very little conversation going on between both sides. Not good. In fact, here's Senator John Barrasso, who's a Republican from Wyoming. He said, quote, "We have a focused targeted solution that we'd hope the House would pass. It's focused on getting people back to work, getting kids back to school, and the specifics of the disease." And of course, look, the administration is also banking on trying to get a vaccine as soon as possible. I would like a vaccine as well, but I want to make sure that it's safe first and effective and tested. I get worried about an administration that is deeply incompetent trying to rush a vaccine, even though I want a vaccine, because I would love to end the coronavirus pandemic and to get back to normal. That would be nice, to not have to wear a mask again, not have to worry about getting coronavirus in public or spreading it to family members, not have to do social distancing anymore. That would be fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't really trust this administration, again, to properly test a vaccine that will be effective. And so I am pretty worried about that. Very, very concerned about that, actually. And so I don't trust it at all. And again, it kind of reeks of political desperation on the part of the Republicans and Trump, which, again, their primary goal is to get things back to normal. That's also the Democrats' goal, but we understand that it's going to take a while and that you actually have to test things and you have to make sure things are safe. And in the interim, while you're doing that, you also have to make sure that people are taken care of and that once they get out of lockdown, to be able to go out and re-stimulate the economy and rebuild the economy, which Republicans are not planning for. That's why they're not offering a lot of stimulus. And so, look, I think the situation is not good at all. Okay. We do need to stimulate the economy. We do need to get people who are out of work money that they can use to pay their bills. And that's it. And to keep them afloat. And also, again, pass a stimulus. Again, I think we should be giving, like other countries, citizens $2,000 a month. I think they should be retroactive for the last 6 months. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. We got a $1,200 check. And it's very, and there's a tiny little bit of a possibility that we might get another one. Mnuchin says yes. Trump says yes. He also says, well, I want it to be larger. Well, I'd love to believe him because that would be great, but I don't believe him whatsoever. And so none of that, again, is in their skinny proposal. And so right now, what the Republican bill does, and even the Democratic bill, doesn't do enough to help the millions of people who are literally facing eviction like right now in the middle of a pandemic. No, what we need to do now is, and it's not going to be popular, is again that $2,000 a month retroactively, and a full lockdown. Couple of months, you'll see the cases plummet. We can reopen slowly, and you know what? It'll work. Why? It's because other countries have done the same thing. Most of Europe did it, and generally they have better outcomes. Their numbers are actually quite low. Yes, they're still having cases because this isn't going away until there's a vaccine, but those cases are manageable. And so they're actually doing a lot better job than the United States, because here it's been a complete debacle. We know what we have to do. None of us wants to do it. So I guess instead, we're going to let hundreds of thousands of more people die, and millions deal with possibly medically expensive after effects of this virus that are going to be with them for the rest of their lives. All because I think Republicans were ideologically opposed to spending money on poor people.